You've heard of Peter Thiel, you've heard of Elon Musk, and you've likely heard about the PayPal mafia. My next guest is also a pioneer in the FinTech space as well, and he's about to drop some wisdom on how to grow a team, protect your assets, and how to accomplish more with less effort. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome to another episode of Making Billions. I'm your host, Ryan Miller, and today I have my dear friend, Chase Harmer. Chase is the founder of multiple startups. One of his last exits from a company he built to a $500 million exit in just a few years. He's now the founder of his latest crowdfunding platform called wishes.inc. So what this means is Chase is about to walk us through a masterclass on starting, growing, and structuring a corporation that knows how to win and win big. So Chase, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, man, great to be here. You know, I'm all about the making billions. I got the B on my arm, and now I'm going B 2.0. So ready.
I love it, man. That's awesome. There you go. That's a super fan, but also just an extraordinary person, man. We've gotten to know each other a little bit offline, and I am so impressed with the things that you've done, Chase. But before we get into all of that juicy stuff, you're going to want to hang in near the end when Chase opens up some of the cheat codes about what he's learned about growing and starting businesses, raising capital, and doing all of these things. He's going to give you some of his most helpful tips that helps you to fast track. But before we get into that, maybe you can help me, Chase. How did you even get into this industry, and how did you become an expert entrepreneur?
People are either entrepreneurs or they're not. It's a gene that like you can't work for someone else. It's kind of like, that's how it works. And I got into the credit card processing business when I was 19 years old. I fell into that business, had a track scholarship, dropped out, started in that business. And right from the beginning, I was always doing pretty well. I started running a guy's office when I was young. 3 months later, I saw how much money he was making, and I quit the next day and started my own company doing the same thing. I borrowed $3,000 from my mom. I came back to my mom for another $5,000. I was like, this is not enough, but I turned that into a company that was doing about $26 million a year. And then I realized I was like big in the hotel space, but I realized that I needed to start building technology and value in the ecosystem, and I couldn't just be a sales commodity product because in the payment processing world, it's steady income streams like insurance, like we were talking about, but it can be thin margins. And if you're only working on margins and you're not offering value, it's hard to compete in today's environment. And I knew that back in 2014 because Stripe was coming on the scene. Stripe was making a huge impact. But you look at their platform, it's so easy to connect. It's kind of like Amazon. You go to Amazon, so easy. You don't realize until later that you're overpaying for everything, but that's the value, right? Because it's easy, you don't care. So I was like, if I could create more value, then I can create more revenue, and people won't really care about the price as much. I had not built any technology before. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had done pretty well in the payment space, and so I kind of leveraged my own money to start building something that looked like technology. And, it was sturdy enough where, people were interested, and I was able to raise some dollars, and that ended up being a thing, but I made an exit from that company. It was acquired in 2022. I started another company in 2022, right? So that, and to make charitable donations transparent. I think, we have some pretty cool initiatives, but everything that I was doing, building technology, payments technology back before this new venture really kind of taught me how to do this the right way. And we've built great product, and I'm super, super excited to take it to market.
Awesome, man. And, the stuff that Chase was talking about when he went to his mom for $3,000, came back for another $5,000. But what that is a strategy in fundraising. And so very often we call that, it's more of a joke, but it still is somewhat serious. Is one of the best places that a lot of entrepreneurs, whether you're launching a company, your own investment fund, or whatever it might be, if you're raising capital, the best place to start is a place we call Triple F. It stands for Friends, Family, and Fools. And, or as I like to say, everybody that sits at your table at Thanksgiving. So either way, these are all people. And so often you can go to friends and family and some off people. And when I say fools, it's more of a joke. It just means people that'll just give you cash and not do any homework. Not that they need to, because we run clean deals, but at the end of the day, they're like, sure, I like you got a cool name, or I'll give you $10,000. And so you're like, well, maybe you do your due diligence, just like anything we talk about on the show. And so Chase goes, natural place is go to friends and family, and just, you do that friends and family round. and you get a few grand and we're in business. And then we just keep scaling it up to there. And little do you know, that grows from that 3,000 plus loan from your mom into a $26 million a year, ultimately resulting in about $500 million exit. So there must have been some hyper growth to get that valuation.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of work.
Yeah, no kidding. So now you're launching a company called wishes.inc, a bit of a crowdfunding platform, but that's overly simplifying it. Maybe you can walk us through some of the stuff that you're doing today.
Yeah, so I was one of the pioneers in virtual credit card technology. So, moving money from one transaction to the other. And so a good example of that in today's market is when we started doing virtual credit card technology, we were doing it for travel sites like Expedia. So if you think about when you go to book a ticket at Expedia, whether that's a plane ticket or a hotel room, they're not the hotel and they're not the airline. So they turn around and push that onto an actual credit card, the money that you get, and they arbitrage that middle part, and then they send it over to the hotel. So I built about 7 patents in card issuing from 2014 to 2022. And I specifically knew how to solve the transparency problem with donations. So after I left my last company, I started donating to charities more often. And I just realized that you never understand what happens to the money after you deliver it. And most crowdfunding platforms, you don't get, all crowdfunding platforms, none of them give tax deductibility. So none of them offer tax deductibility. None of them can actually tell you where the money goes. And there's no platform out there that can actually deliver money quickly. Like, so Facebook, as an example, is probably the largest, charitable giving platform on the market by, proxy, just because they have so many people there, but they don't deliver those funds for 3 months. And then, so when you donate to a campaign, those people that are, they're raising the money for, they're not actually seeing dollars for, 90 days. And then the same on Instagram's 45 days. GoFundMe, which is obviously the 800-pound gorilla next to Facebook, is 10 days, but after 10 days, they have no idea what happens to the money. So we saw a huge gap in the market where we could deliver spectacular returns for our investors by building a whole entire ecosystem with retailers, our card issuing platform, and FinTech technology with a nonprofit partner. So we can deliver on all those things and make donors really happy, so they understand what happens to their money, and the people that are receiving the money get the dollars that they need faster. So yeah, I mean, we just saw a big gap, and I had literally just been doing that, building that transparency for like 9 years right before that. And I was like, I know how to fix this problem.
Man, that's phenomenal. And so you're registered as a charity, 501c3.
Well, yeah, we have a FinTech, and then we have a 501c3, two separate boards, two separate. Yeah. So we keep those church and state, but donations for social good causes go through our charitable, our 501c3. But then we also are we're getting into the political side of things too for the 2024 election. And that's all going through the FinTech. So
wow, smart. Because I feel like a lot of people are very interested in this next election. I mean, holy smokes, what a world it is right now.
Yeah.
And are you launching soon, or have you launched? When's the big day?
Yeah. So we've been building the technology. So I started the foundational work, like getting the 501c public charity and making sure that all the T's were crossed and I's were dotted for the connection between the two companies and how they're going to work together. That took some time. We started building the tech in June 2022. So it's been about 15 months. We've gone through 10 months of compliance with Cross River Bank, Pathward Bank, and then we just signed a brand partnership with MasterCard.
Man, good for you. That is awesome. One of the things I've used these, and I know other people that have also used this. Pretty popular is these platforms like GoFundMe, and I know like you can do stuff on Facebook and stuff as well. For those who are starting a business or an investment fund, because we got both, which is also a business, but we've got people from all sides of finance and finance and investing on making billions. This is where we come together. And so moving money on a FinTech app, I know one of the biggest challenges, this is just in banking in general, is it's a very complex system and it takes a very long time. You mentioned earlier about friction, like using Amazon and how easy things are, right? Like if you got an Amazon Echo or something, you can literally yell, order me hot sauce in the air and it shows up at your door. Like talk about reducing friction. Using some of these, one of the things is, especially if it's political or there's some kind of humanitarian thing, usually people need them really quick.
Right.
And, maybe you can walk me through a little bit about how your platform works and how it compares to some of the competitors. Because before you say that though, one of the things, and when you're building a business or an investment fund and you got to issue your investment thesis, you're trying to differentiate yourself a little bit. So you don't necessarily even have to be different. You can, but you can be better. But either way, or you don't have to be better, you can just be different. Either one works for investors. What have you found to be as far as reducing friction as it compares to your other app in, say, closing time, getting money, moving that forward?
In our platform, because we move money through the card rails and we can actually see both sides of the transaction. We can validate the front side, validate the back side. We can validate category specific donations. So we can deliver funds in 24 hours anywhere. So you look at the Maui fires, the fires, it's hard to get out to areas like that, but there's people on the ground, and we're going to have ambassadors at disaster and crisis zones like that. And we'll have people, we can issue them to the Apple Google Wallet, or we have a connected shopping portal. So we're talking about convenience, right? So think about like Amazon, except with like 5,000 stores, right? So Amazon's one of our partners on the retail side. So when people donate to a story, first of all, if you're a wisher, let's just start with that side. So you're a wisher, you set up a story, you're saying, hey, I need help with getting groceries for my family. We don't have any food, right? You can specifically, as a donor, see that story, donate to the grocery category, and then we issue a card so that which goes to her in within 24 hours, and she can spend that money inside of our portal right from her wherever she is through Instacart or Kroger's or Safeway. She can get that groceries, but that card can only be utilized for groceries. And that's all inside of our app. So when you go to it, we have it kind of designated into 4 different big categories: services, life essentials, health, and emergency. And those 4 categories have a bunch of subcategories. The subcategories are, like the pets, the ride share, gasoline, hotel, airfare, all those things. So donors can specifically donate to whatever exactly they want, the people are asking for. They can get those people can get that money, or that charity can get that money in less than 24 hours, and you can see exactly what happens to the money afterwards. There's no other platform, in the world right now that can do that. No one's offering true transparency. The only people that came up with ideas like that were in blockchain and cryptocurrency. And we talked about this earlier, but although I'm a believer in the digital technology and how money's going to move in the future, credit cards and MasterCards accomplishes the same thing that cryptocurrency is doing by creating ledgers on both sides of the transaction. When you purchase something at the store, you see it on your receipt in 5 seconds. When they spend it through our platform, because we're the card issuer, that they're spending it on exactly what they asked for. No other platform, crowdfunding platform, can guarantee that, hey, I'm raising money for cancer, or I'm raising money for my dog's sick. No one can guarantee that they're actually spending that money on what they're asking for, because it's all being done through the banking rails. And the banking rails, it goes into a black box. And on the other side of the black box, that's why you see stuff on the news all the time with platforms like GoFundMe. They call them GoFraudMe. I mean, they're huge, but they're the only platform in town, right? And that's really where the opportunity is. We don't have to be GoFundMe. We just have to take a big enough piece of their business where we matter, and we can get a valuation that will allow us to make an exit.
Thank you for sharing that. You mentioned that you have a turnaround of 24 hours. Do you know what GoFundMe is?
10 days.
Okay. And what about say the Meta, Instagram, Facebook's?
Oh yeah. Facebook's 90 days, and then Instagram's 45 days.
So you talked about, now I can see where you're coming from. So you talked about reducing friction, differentiation. Folks, this is what you do. And so this is why Chase is an experienced entrepreneur. So he understands the elements that he needs to hit. Not only is he an experienced entrepreneur, but Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, these PayPal mafia guys. Chase is the guy that maybe you haven't heard of. He's one of those pioneers in the payment industry, and he's kicking butt one more time on the giving side, using his patents and all of these things. So let me draw context that an investor or a VC might geek out, right? So we're providing it. So you say that GoFundMe's 10 days and you're in 1. So you're 10 times faster. We can loosely use this metric. 45 times faster than Instagram, and 90x faster.
But the most important thing is, like, not only that, but because of the fact that we built this convenience and this transparency, it allows us to make 14 times the amount of money. So we're making 14 cents on the dollar, where they're making less than a penny. Yeah.
So more profitable, faster delivery to the end user, meaning money, right? Where's my money is probably a thing that a lot of these companies I can't believe you said Facebook was 90 days.
90 days, they pay quarterly. Yeah.
Holy smoke. So imagine, like you mentioned, Hawaii. Yeah, sir, we'll help you in 90 days. They're like, dude, I need it now. I don't have groceries.
Yeah, maybe they make exceptions for events like that. But but for any normal, giving campaign, that's the kind of time frames that they're looking at. So, we also fill a big hole for big players like that, we could become pretty interesting too once you start scaling.
Phenomenal work, brother. That is impressive, man. So you're able to issue those, and do you have any rewards or anything like that attached to your product?
Yeah, one of the things that we didn't talk about was donors can actually earn the cashback categories because it's category specific. So think about it. Maui's a perfect example because that island was on fire. People wanted to fly out of there. If they needed places to stay, they could have bought them a hotel room or bought them an airline ticket. And most people, and that's an easy category to kind of focus on, because most people will earn bonus miles for, buying airline tickets or hotel rewards, or giving somebody a dinner, like at a restaurant, or buying groceries. Those are all bonus categories on most credit cards. So when you donate specifically on the front side, you say, hey, I'm going to help this guy out with groceries or a ride share or whatever those things are, you're actually earning your cash back in addition to your tax deductibility. So you get your full tax deductibility instantaneously. It's all inside of your dashboard. And then you also earn your cash back from your own credit card. And if you're an ambassador inside of our program, which we have kind of levels to the game and do different things, and you donate more and do these certain things, you actually earn an additional 1% cash back from our platform in addition to whatever cash back you're earning from the bonus categories that you're supporting.
Perfect. Wow. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is not that this is an infomercial, folks, but what I'm talking about is bringing up these different things are he understood how his competitors sent money and found there was a gap, that there was too long. So Chase has been obsessed with solving a particular problem. And then he understands the clients and understands, hey, bonus miles are kind of things that are important. Oh, and by the way, investing in my company, we're super profitable as well. You see the difference. So from the eyes of a VC, when you hear a founder say all these things, it's like we smoke our competitors, we make more money, we understand what our clients want, and we offer that as well. And then you're just like, shut up, take my money, right? So I'm not soliciting an investment or anything like that. Yeah. So, but it's just, we want to illustrate through Chase that the principles that exist is saying when you're standing in front of an investor, be ready to say, how does your product work? How does it compare, or your offer, whatever it is, how does it compare to other of your competitors? Don't ever say I don't have competition. At least have an answer to say, well, the closest competitor, we're a bit of a blue ocean. I've heard that. Our closest competitors, if you really want to stretch it, could be this person. But at the end of the day, we feel like there is no competition. It's okay to say that as long as you understand who your closest competitors are and the value proposition and be able to explain it very, very well. So thank you for that, Chase. As we move on from all of this experience, man, all of these things that you've been able to do, you've done some amazing stuff throughout your career. Wonder if you could explain maybe 2 or 3 things that you found that if you could tell your younger self some of this your old sage wisdom that you have now, what would you tell your younger self as far as some helpful information?
The way that you presented it to me said, hey, well, if you had 3 things to tell your son, like what were the 3 important things that you would, leave with them? And I think number 1, I think technology is the future, right? So we have the future is kind of really built around people that are innovating and trying to change the world. And most people like me, we're kind of like, we're a little mad, So I think we don't necessarily know all the things, but we're well ready to go out there and try to tackle them and, do it full force. When I did that with my first company, I made tons of mistakes. So what I would leave them with is, because I know he's a lot like me, is how to, structure, your first engineering team, which ones are the most important. So that way he knows like how to get a product potentially to market and it's not a complete disaster. Because, it took me a lot of money to figure that out and a lot of pain, and I know that eventually he's going to be doing that. So, when we dig into the details, just kind of backtracking, like how this all went wrong for me in the beginning, like I had no idea what I was doing, but I was just willing to risk it all. So I threw $200,000 at a company, some guys in India, because they said they were engineers. I really had no idea what that even meant at that time. I just knew that I didn't know what it was. And I knew that I needed them to build whatever I was trying to do. 6-7 months later, 200 grand down the toilet, I had nothing, right? And so I really was starting from scratch all over again. And I think for me, I realized I was like, wow, this is going to be really expensive. And, then the next guy I hired was, I'm a sales guy. So he knows how to talk the talk, but I didn't even really know what the talk was. And I think, I hired the wrong guy. So you got to have a DevOps guy. You have to have a front end engineer. I think the first guy that you have to have is the DevOps. Just so like when you build a business, we talk about structure and process. If you don't have that structure and process, you're done. Same thing with a good foundation. You can't build a house on twigs. You know what I mean? So the DevOps guy, he builds the foundation for the house. And then that's kind of the bricks, And then after that, you have your front end guy, but you also have your back end guy. That's going to the back end guy kind of builds on top of the DevOps. And then the front end guy comes on the top of the back end guy to kind of finish the house. Outside of that, you got your UX stuff. But I think really, really important. And one of the things that I went really wrong, 2 things. Number 1, I can't talk to engineers because I have no idea what I'm talking about. And when I'm passionate about something, I scare engineers. So I think, you need someone that can break you down and actually make you understandable to them. They're like a different species, and I think I wish I knew how to do that. I just can't. But you need someone that can break you down well enough where even in the bad days, they're still not going to want to run in a hole and hide. They want to work with you and make this thing happen. And the last thing is, the last guy in that puzzle is the guy that's going to be doing all the documentation. Because I can tell you from experience, when you build a huge mountain and there's no documentation and something gets lost inside of the cracks, it's almost impossible to find out where the problem is. So you got to like break things down to, and this goes into the next one is really you have to go slow to go fast. And, going right into that is I was thinking we're going too slow. we need more people. We need more spaghetti. This is what we need. More spaghetti equals more problems. I didn't realize until later that if I had to just even cut the team down, got better to more talented people, the right people in the right places, it would have gone a million times faster and been a lot less painful than I made it, for sure.
Awesome. So working more and hiring more doesn't necessarily mean you're getting more. So that was one of your tips, was go slow to go fast. But working smart and hiring the best does equal getting more. That was from my experience as well. So I am very well known for this thing is I typically play the long game. I guess that is what investing actually is. But also I'm patient. I can wait for the right person. I don't want to wait. You know, like you said, I blew away $200,000 hiring people that said they do it, and I didn't know. Okay, that obviously lesson learned, right? So hiring more and working more wasn't necessarily helping you to get more. But when you work smarter and hired the best, then things really took a turn for better for you. And so, and then
it's hindsight.
Yeah, exactly.
At that point, it's almost too late because you're in a disaster zone. You got to figure out how to just rescue yourself.
Oh, yeah. We've been there.
Yeah,
man. Yeah. And so you mentioned hiring like front end, back end, DevOps, sure, like UI, UX and QA, QC, those different things.
But if you need a core group of people, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're building something, you're not going to have 20 people. You don't need the designer for the. I mean, those are all like, nice to have. It's like once you have the money, right? Yeah. Like you need a core group of people that can basically do all the functionality of, the dream team. So I think if you have a solid like 4 or 5 people, you can build, a decent product if you have the right people in the right places. And of course, the product gets bigger, product scales, like you build the team from there. But hiring more than that without actually understanding the process. And I think I don't know if that was our other thing, but process was just really it was a huge learning process for me.
Yeah, process management. Yeah, that is critical. And then when you're hiring people, you mentioned you had, your first hire matters because they can translate. And folks, there's a theory in startups where a lot of people they have this passion for an idea, or they want to solve a problem, or they just think their boss is an idiot and they could do better on their own, or some combination of all of them. And so typically what you see, and this is very basic and broad strokes, you'll see a visionary, a manager, and a worker bee. And there's those 3 levels, and they can have all of them. And so the visionary, like Chase, who has the vision and the passion and the energy to just pull this thing, throw it over his shoulder and carry it over the finish line. But what happens is that they're good in the kind of this ethereal realm of possibilities, right? But we need structure. And so what Chase is talking about is saying, I'm really good with vision and energy and passion, but I needed someone to add structure to that vision so it was achievable. And so finding, as you said, in a tech company was DevOps. But regardless of what kind of company you're building, if you're the visionary, please find a good person who can translate vision and turn it into structure, policy, process, SOPs, all of those things. Those kind of people are just a godsend for an entrepreneur. And then eventually you have these worker bees or whatever you want to call them, frontline workers who come in a very structured environment that was created out of the vision of the entrepreneur by the manager. And you've got this healthy ecosystem of profitability. Would you agree?
Yeah. And one of the other things I think is a key thing to point out is, just taking a step back, I did the same thing here. So instead of having, someone break me down, I realized my last company that I'm kind of like this wizard, but I'd rather be behind the scenes and I need a good operator to run the show. And so I hired a lady from the social good tech space that worked at the Ford Foundation. She's amazing, but she's a great operator, and she basically handles the stuff that I'm not as great at, but so I can focus on the things that make me valuable. And I think that was learned from the last FinTech that I started.
I love that. So this is a big question I do get asked a lot by entrepreneurs or people launching their fund. But at the end of the day, everybody's looking for good quality people, right? So we always say, yeah, when you got the right person, how do you know it's the right person? Like, what do you do? Do you have, like you said, you hired people that speak the language better than you? I mean, I know some people do tests. Some people just have 18,000 interviews. I mean, how do you find the right person from your experience?
I think if you're a startup, number one, we talked about engineers would love to say, most engineers I'm a full stack engineer. I can tell you that, like, I've never met an engineer that's great at both front end and back end. They're great at one or the other because that's where they focus most of their time, and that's just the truth. But if you can that would be the best fit. If someone that can kind of do both of those things, that would be a great first hire. A back end, front end guy, full stack maybe, but someone like that's really well-rounded, because you don't have that much money to spend. So, and you need somebody that can, kind of just, he can be in the weeds with you, because you need someone that's going to be in that weeds, and he will help you hire those other people, because you don't know what questions to ask. And there is tests that you want to give those to those people, and they're different for each set of job roles. Like the DevOps, his skills test will be different than the front end engineer test and the UI test and the back end guy test. Funny though, my guy, we had a really, really good engineer that was working for us, and he was doing these interviews. And he was giving this guy one of those coding tests, and you could see that he was on the other side of the Zoom. He was looking at Google, like doing it. It's funny. So you also got to like take that into consideration. And just because he was like this smart, he's kind of smart for doing that. At the same time, he's definitely not going to be behind the scenes, like in the weeds, doing the things. And you really need somebody that's sharp, because having someone average or below average, because you're paying them less. I don't want to use any as an example, but you can get guys super cheap over there, but the quality is also not that great. Now, that doesn't mean that all of them are bad, but definitely there's a lot of them that aren't great, and people would rather just do it cheaply, but you're wasting time. You know what I mean? It's a waste of time. Time is the worst thing to waste, because there's someone right behind you that's trying to build what you're doing, and they have better people than you. So, but yeah, I don't know anything about that. What I do know is I make them do those things. The guys that I'm with that are doing those hirings, I trust their judgment. And I know that I don't know enough to know if I'm right or wrong, because it would be more of a character test than a skills test. I have no idea.
Right on, man. One of the secret things, I don't know, is that much of a secret. It won't be in 10 seconds here, but one of the things that is really good that I've found at focus, and you've actually talked about this, so I'm picking up on patterns, filtering it through some of the excellence that I've been able to achieve, and also learn from brilliant consultants at Accenture and McKinsey and so on. One of the areas on turning around, and this is what Chase is talking about, is there's 3 pillars, and I built this campaign when I was working on my own turnaround, and it's people, process, and technology. And so we talked about people, we talked about technology with those people, and then also process. Focusing on those 3 areas really helps to tighten up and give you some visibility. And if you monitor those things in your operations, you can actually find ways to improve profitability, reduce costs, accelerate speed. And this is why Chase is able to build teams to generate high profitability, low friction businesses, because he understands the value of people, the value of process, and the value of technology. You can do that in a fund. You can do that in a startup. You can pretty much do that and should do that in almost any business. But if you mess up, if you have great people that you hand them off and sit them in a desk and tell them, here's what you have to do, and it's a horrible process, they're going to look bad. They're going to be frustrated. Your turnover is going to go up. And so what Chase does, I can see all this stuff with just these little bits that he's saying as a VC myself. I can say, wow, this guy understands how to not only build businesses, but how to run them, right? It's not enough to turn over the engine. You got to drive the car. And so we talked about building a solid dev team, maybe having tests. Some of them are going on Google to figure it out.
Tests. That's one of the guys do.
Yeah. And then you talked about going, go slow to go fast. So working smarter and hiring the best is what gets you more, not working, hiring more. How have you found, let's say a third one. Here's one that we hear a lot. So you start a company, it actually works. Your share value is going up. You see a lot of these things. And so your shares in this company are quite valuable. This is anybody in any kind of firm or startup or fund. You have shares, you have LLCs. There's LLCs. I mean, how do trusts and LLCs or just protecting it, because you've built a significant amount of wealth as an entrepreneur or a fund manager or whatever it is. What do you do with your holdings and that wealth that you collect, and how do you protect that?
Yeah. And I think it's something that anyone can do, and you can do it with very little money, just by simply putting it in a trust. And when people put it in a trust and they put it in, your name trust, that's not exactly the right way to do it, because you're doing it to protect yourself, and you make your assets invisible, if you will, and they're insulated inside of theirs. And there's a level of protection if it's not in your name, if it's in some random name like a boat or a dog or whatever. And there's ways to do it if you wanted to spend more money, where you can make it pretty bulletproof and put layers in there to the point where it's almost impossible to find any of the assets that you have. Simply doing those types of things, because you never know what happens in life. You have kids, there's a sleepover, some kid slips and falls in your backyard. They know that you have money. You thought you were friends. Now you realize you're not. And that kind of stuff happens all the time. And when you're not protected, you leave yourself vulnerable. And I think, no matter how little money you have now, or if you have a lot of money, then certainly it's worth your while to do this before something happens, because when it happens, it's too late. At that point, you would be looking like you're hiding assets. But if you do it before anything happens, and nothing happens, great, But if there is a chance, as you grow your business, as you become more of a target, things happen in life, that you potentially are risking all the hard work that you've put into for something you can't control.
That's brilliant. So trust, and sometimes trust on LLCs or whatever it is. I think what Chase is saying is you need to make sure that you protect yourself, that as you grow in success, that sometimes that puts a target on your back. That's not always a bad target. It just becomes you're either famous or infamous. But either way, you're just saying like, I need to navigate without dealing with a lot of problems. I was talking to my wife today and I said, look, every decade in my life has different things. Right now in my 40s, it's all about minimizing the amount of just BS that happens in your life and all these things that come. Is just saying like, my job now is to minimize that. And so one of those ways is asset protection, which Chase, you fully know. So before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you would like our fans around the world to know? Anything at all?
Yeah, no, thank you for, first of all, for having me on the show. It was a lot of fun. We're super excited about what we built here. We know what we're doing. We built a great product, and I think it'll change the world of charitable giving, and doing good to make good is something that, I think everyone can kind of get behind. We're raising money. So obviously if people wanted to get in touch with me or potentially interested in what we're doing, you can certainly reach out to me at chase@wishes.inc. And if you would like to get on the wait list to join the platform so you can see how cool it is for yourself, go to launch.wishes.inc and you can give us your information, and we'll keep you in touch all the way until we go live in the end of September.
Awesome. Perfect. So as we wrap things up, just to synthesize everything that Chase and I talked about, don't put anything in your own name. Just make sure you have those trusts and LLCs just for basic asset protection, or as I so poetically put, minimize the BS in your life. The other thing is build a solid dev team, or just a solid team in general. Chase talked about make sure that your first hire on whatever kind of team that you're building is someone who can help you interview and kind of get through the noise and write to the signal as far as those. And then finally, go slow to go fast. Working more and hiring more doesn't mean you're getting more, but working smart and hiring the best does help you to get more. You do these things, and you too will be well on your way in your pursuit of making billions.